we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
As Iraq veterans against the war, we are resisting an occupation we once risked our lives for. We swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, but we found out the hard way that the greatest enemies of the Constitution are not to be found in the sands of some far-off land, but rather right here at home.
Adam Kokesh, now running for Congress in New Mexico, had served in Fallujah under the Iraqi Freedom Directive and saw some things over there he wasn't too proud of. Bringing this back home, talking about the oath that is taken by our police and military to uphold and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, coincidentally, on the line with us, we have Becky Shay. She's with the Public Relations Department for the American Police Group. AmericanPoliceGroup.com is their website, and they've been out in the news. Becky, you guys have been in the news. People really very curious as to what was going on there in Montana. I appreciate you joining us on the show to let us find out a little bit more about you guys. You're kind of like a Whacking Hut and a Blackwater kind of mixed together. Is that somewhat correct?
That's an interesting way to phrase it. I don't know if it's correct or not. We are a corporation that does some contract work, as you've referred to our website. Our only plan in Hardin is to work with local government and provide some detention services and spur some economic development. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to comment just from your earlier lead-in, Jack, was Hardin does not have a police department, and we are not providing law enforcement services in Hardin.
I believe when you guys came in, you had police decals on your car, and what's confusing is that people aren't familiar with your group, which is why I'm glad you're here, because I think, when we get all of this out, maybe people will have less to fear. At least that's my intention. When people saw American Police Group on the side of the cars, they assumed that somebody was coming in and taking over as the police. I guess that was the misconception, no?
I know that was the misconception. And I think it's number one, that's not available under Montana law. Law enforcement in Montana needs to be established by a local governmental entity. Yeah. And secondly, this is Montana, and we're pretty proud people. We're not going to let anyone take over anything.
That's what I heard, though a radio station up there was recently just seized that we had been on for quite some time. And this is the thing, is that we just hear so many of these rumors, and sometimes the rumors get exaggerated. And I think, people live in this kind of fear of police takeovers and a police state. I'm sure you watched the news and saw what happened in Pittsburgh at the G20. So I think their fears are maybe sometimes irrational, but I can understand where they come from. I'd sure like to find out more about you guys. As you said, you provide, I guess, what you can call contractor services for just about everything, from national security to international air marshals, helping in kidnap and ransoms, security for convoys in Iraq and Pakistan, I'm reading here on your website, as well as detention facilities, as we're seeing, I guess, in Montana. That pretty much spells it out, right?
Perfectly spells it out.
Yeah. So what is the difference between somebody like you and somebody like, say, Whacking Hut, who does, private prisons for hire, or somebody like Blackwater, who's being used, as some would say, mercenaries in the Middle East? What's the difference between you guys and them?
Well, really the best thing that I can speak to, or my area of expertise, is the detention area.
Okay.
So that's where my focus is going to be.
Well, let's ask this then. Let's ask this.
The work in Montana is about detention, but I want to talk to those other issues too. I'm not blowing you off. I would never do that. So, okay. What's the difference between us and those other companies? We are a private corporation, relatively young in California, and just trying to get ourselves established in Montana.
Okay.
Obviously, the various services, with the exception of detention, but the other services that you mentioned, our staff has experience in and is available to do. The detention opportunity is our first expansion into detention, and really is an exciting opportunity for us and for the city of Hardin.
So this is your first foray into detention centers. And if you could tell us who exactly is intended to be detained at the detention facilities in Hardin, Montana. If you could elaborate on that, please.
You bet. The Two Rivers Detention Facility, located here in Montana, was built, is authorized, and has been inspected and passed that inspection to provide security, or to provide detention services for local and federal jurisdictions. So that means if the sheriff here in Bighorn County needs some extra bed space because his jail is overflowing, then we have contractually agreed that there will be space available here in town for him. If there's another city, or more likely in Montana law, if there's another county in Montana, the state of Montana, or another county or state across the United States, or the United States itself, that needs space, and we can agree to a contract between that agency and the city of Hardin, then we've got space available. We only are built and classified to serve offenders who are minimum and medium security, and because of regulations for sight and sound separation among men, women, and children, this facility will only hold males. So basically, minimum and medium security males from across the United States. You know, there was a push at one point, because this facility has been empty for so long, to bring in Guantanamo Bay people.
Right.
We will not hold Guantanamo Bay or any multinational offenders in this facility.
Okay, and in the case of maybe civil unrest or something to that nature, can people be shipped off or sent to that facility? Do you know if there's any agreements, such as with FEMA or other agencies, where you might provide that service?
There are no agreements, and that is not an area that we would go into business. And I frankly have to tell you that coming from Montana, living in this section of Montana for 9 years, and trying to close the deal to buy a house and move to Hardin, Montana, that's not something that the residents of this city or county would allow their elected officials to do.
Well, we've heard that before. With all due respect, I have to be a little skeptical, as the people haven't been making decisions, at least here in Texas and a lot of places we broadcast to, for quite some time. I mean, they can voice their concern and all of that, but if the authorities want to move forward and do something outside of maybe what they think should be done, they do it, and we've seen that in the past. But Montana is a little bit of an exception, and you are right about that.